Chapter 9 Honest Loot from the Fields. It must have been after midnight when we got below the island at last. The raft seemed to go mighty slow. We planned, if we saw a boat coming after us, to take the canoe and break from the Illinois shore. It was well a boat didn't come. We hadn't thought to put the gun in the canoe, or a fishing line, or anything to eat. We had been in too much of a sweat to think of so many things. It wasn't good judgment to put everything on the raft. When the first streak of day showed, we tied a towhead on the Illinois side. A towhead is a sandbar with cottonwoods on it as thick as harrow teeth. We hacked off some branches with the hatchet, all covered up with the raft with them. We stayed there all day. The channel at that place was down the Missouri shore. We watched the rafts and steamboats spin down the Missouri shore, and the upbound steamboats fight the big river in the middle. That evening, when it was beginning to come on dark, we poked our heads out of the cottonwood thicket and looked up and down and across. Nothing in sight. So, Jim took up some of the top planks on the raft and built a snug wigwam to get under when the weather was blazing hot or rainy. Right in the middle of the floor of the wigwam, we put a layer of dirt about 5 or 6 inches deep, with a frame around it to hold the dirt in place. This was to build a fire on, in sloppy or chilly weather. We made an extra steering oar, too. One of the others might get broken or lost. We fixed up a short forked stick to hang the old lantern on. We must always show a light when a steamboat was coming, to keep from being run over. That night we floated between 7 and 8 hours, with a current that was making over 4 miles an hour. We caught fish and talked, and took a swim now and then to keep off sleepiness. It was kind of solemn, drifting down the big still river, looking up at the stars. We didn't talk loud, and when we laughed it was only a low chuckle. We traveled during the night and hid in the daytime. We had mighty good weather, and nothing happened that night, nor the next, nor the next. Every night we passed towns, some of them away up on black hillsides, nothing but a shiny bed of lights. One night we passed St. Louis, and it was like the whole world lit up. As soon as daylight showed, we stopped and tied up. Then we cut young cottonwoods and willows and hid the raft, and set out the fishing lines. Next we slid into the river and had a swim to freshen up and cool off. Then we rested on the sandy bottom where the water was about knee-deep and watched the daylight come. Not a sound anywhere, the whole world asleep, only maybe sometimes the bullfrogs a-cluttering. Soon as it was night, out we shoved. When we got the raft out to about the middle of the river, we let her float wherever the current wanted her to. Then we dangled our legs in the water and talked about all kinds of things. We stayed naked day and night, whenever the mosquitoes would let us. It was lovely living on a raft. We had the sky up there, all speckled with stars. We would look up at them and talk about whether they had been made or only just happened. Jim said he thought they had been made. I said they had happened. It would take too long to make so many. Jim said the moon could have laid them. That looked reasonable. I have seen a frog lay almost as many, so it could be done. We liked to see falling stars come streaking down. Jim said maybe they had got spoiled and had to be hove out of the nest. Every now and then I would slip ashore toward 10 o'clock at some little village and buy 10 or 15 cents worth of meal or bacon or other stuff. Sometimes I lifted a chicken that wasn't roosting comfortable and took him along. Pop always said, take a chicken when you get a chance, because if you don't want him yourself, you can find somebody that does. But I never saw Pop when he didn't want the chicken himself. Mornings before daylight, I slipped into cornfields or borrowed a watermelon or some corn, or things of that kind. Pop always said it was no harm to borrow things if you meant to pay them back sometime. But the widow said it was a soft name for stealing, and no decent body would do it. Jim said he reckoned the widow was partly right, and Pop was partly right. The best way would be for us to pick out 2 or 3 things and say we wouldn't borrow them anymore. We tried to make up our minds whether to stop borrowing watermelons or cantaloupes or mushmelons or what. We decided to stop borrowing crab apples and persimmons. I was glad we got it settled this way. Crab apples never are very good, and persimmons wouldn't be ripe for 2 or 3 months yet. We shot a waterfowl now and then, and that got up too early in the morning or didn't go to bed early enough in the evening. Take it all round, we lived pretty high. One night we had a big storm after midnight with a power of thunder and lightning. The rain poured down in a solid sheet. We stayed in the wigwam and left the raft to take care of itself. When the lightning glared out, we could see a big straight river ahead and high rocky bluffs on both sides. By and by, I said, "Jim, look yonder." It was a steamboat that had killed herself on a rock. The lightning showed her very plain. She was leaning over, with part of her upper deck poking up above water. "Let's land on her, Jim." But Jim was dead against it at first. "I don't want to go fooling round no wreck. We might borrow something worth having out of the captain's stateroom. Cigars, I bet you, and cost 5 cents apiece. Stick a candle in your pocket. I can't rest, Jim, till we give her a going over. Tom Sawyer would never go by this wreck. He'd go aboard if it was his last act. And wouldn't he throw style into it? Wouldn't he spread himself? Why, you'd think he was Christopher Columbus discovering Kingdom Come." Jim grumbled and then agreed to go. The lightning showed us the wreck again, just in time. We went up to it and made fast.